All right, hello everyone. Today we are going to be looking at theories of motivation. How is it that we are pushed or driven to do the things that we do on a daily basis? You do tons and tons of things. What is it that drives you? What is it that moves you to do those things? So what we're going to focus on today are different theories that talk about this concept, that look into this idea of why is it that we do the things that we do. Um, so we'll start with instinct and evolutionary theory. So simply put, with all of these things, we're asking, okay, how does this influence, or what makes us do these things? What pushes us? So when we are looking at instinct theory, we are looking at what are some of the things that our ancestors did in order to survive, and how does that still influence us today? Which is the real look at the evolutionary theory. And instincts are those unlearned behaviors that are, inside of our DNA that motivates and pushes us to do things. So things like being a part of a community, being a part of a group. We are almost desperate to have friends and family, and a big part of that is just it's in our DNA. It is just we have a desperate need to belong. You could say that your fight or flight response was another instinct. When danger arises, no one needs to be told, like, hey, this is what you're supposed to do. We have these natural instincts of, like, hey, I'm going to get out of here, or I'm going to get ready to fight. So these are instincts. These are things that push us to do something depending on the situation. So next we have achievement motivation. So achievement motivation is just kind of the overarching broad concept for motivation. And we'll talk about some things that kind of fall underneath it. So simply put, this is a person's desire for some sort of accomplishment, some sort of mastery of skill. This is a person that is attempting to meet a higher standard. Their reasoning or their drive is, hey, I want to reach this mark, or I want to get to this point, so I'm going to train, or I'm going to study in order to reach that end goal. We then fall into incentive theory. So incentive theory is you have a behavior is motivated by a desire for reinforcement or incentives. Basically, you have two people that are doing the exact same activity, but their motivations might be very different, and those motivations can influence how well that person does, how long it would take, or how much enjoyment they are getting from that thing. You have a simple example of two people running a marathon. One is doing it for fame and glory, and the other person is doing it to become a better person, to grow and develop as a human being. These are all different ways in which we are moved to make decisions and moved to do things. So within incentive theory, we have extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. You need to make sure that you know the differences between these two things. Extrinsic motivation is motivation that comes from outside of ourselves. So this could be money, this could be fame, this could be a trophy. These are all things that influence our behavior based on the outside. Intrinsic motivation is personal. I'm doing this for myself. I'm doing this because it makes me happy, or because I want to be the best at it, or just to be a better person. When we're looking at the differences between extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, you want to be able to differentiate just, all right, where's the source coming from? What is driving this person? I want to I want to work out because I want to be really strong and it's good for my health. That's intrinsic motivation. I want to work out because I want other people to look at me and to think that I'm really well muscled. That's extrinsic motivation. We're getting our motivation from the outside. So the over-justification effect has to deals with intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So basically this is looking at, all right, you have a person who's intrinsically motivated to do something. They just really enjoy it. So maybe this person loves to paint. They really enjoy painting. It just, makes them happy. They love to challenge themselves, trying new things. So a person is intrinsically motivated to do something. They are then given an extrinsic motivator to do the same thing. So a friend comes up and says, "Hey, can you paint the wall in my bedroom? Because you just do some sort of design, and I'll pay you for it." So you have a person that's intrinsically motivated to paint, something that they enjoy doing, and then they are given an extrinsic motivator to do the same thing. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes the person won't end up doing it. For a lot of us, we might be like, well, that's like having our cake and eating it too, or that's the icing on top of, sugar on top of the ice cream or whatever. But oftentimes what ends up happening is that this extra incentive takes away our intrinsic motivation. It moves the pendulum over. You're no longer doing this for the reasons that you originally would. Like, hey, this just makes me happy. Like, I really enjoy it. Now you're on a timeline. Now you have expectations. Now you have all these outside forces that take away from what you intrinsically enjoy about what's going on. And some people really just don't do well. You have people who get scholarships to play sports somewhere, and they realize that they're not that now that their playing ability or their scholarship is dependent on their playing ability, might not enjoy the activity anymore because this isn't why they do it for the love of the game. And now that thing is being taken away. I like using the example of when you're at your house and your room is messy and you're just like, hey, I should probably clean that up. And so you decide that tomorrow you're going to do that thing. And then, the next morning before you get started, your parents come in, see your room, and say, hey, you need to clean that up. And now, very often, you don't want to do that thing anymore. You were literally going to do it in just a little bit. You hadn't gotten around to it. But now that someone has changed the reasoning behind it, the motivation behind it, out the window. Don't want to do it anymore. Okay, so self-efficacy is just one of those concepts we've got to cover. This was a concept postulated by Albert Bandura that looked into how a person views their own capabilities. So self-efficacy is just like how much confidence do you have in yourself to succeed in a certain task. And so when we're looking at this, people who have high self-efficacy are will take on more difficult tasks. They will work harder at difficult items, where someone with low self-efficacy might just give up. They are willing to try newer things, and their belief in themselves often really helps them get through specific things, as they have faith that they can accomplish it. So have a high self-efficacy. It will help you in the long run. Okay, so the drive reduction theory. So the drive reduction theory was put together by Clark Hull. He really wanted to create this theory that encapsulated everything and all the reasons why we do the things that we do. But the end result is he came up with the drive reduction theory, which doesn't really talk or doesn't really highlight or look into things that we do on an emotional level. It's all physical. So basically, the drive reduction theory states that we, at certain points in our lives, lose homeostasis. So if you remember from biology, homeostasis is that equilibrium, that balance that we have, where, hey, I'm good, I don't need anything. But for Clark Hull, what is going on is you have a situation where, I've been talking to you for, 10 minutes or so, and so I have lost my homeostasis of thirst. I'm a little thirsty. I haven't, I'm a little parched, okay? So that lack of homeostasis creates a need, which creates a drive, motivates me to act, and now I return to homeostasis. And so this theory shows, like, why do we take care of any of our physical needs? Well, this is how we are motivated to go out and eat. It's how we're motivated to go use the restroom, to take a nap, all of that. Now, the drive reduction theory, while it does motivate us to act, doesn't always do so. So right now, I'm thirsty, I could take another drink, but I don't want to interrupt this thing by having you hear me drink, so I'm not. So just because the drive reduction theory influences your choices does not mean that you are actually going to do it. How many times have you been in a classroom, needed to use the restroom, but you held it in because you needed to? How many times have you been tired, but because you needed to do a little extra studying or you wanted to play some video games with friends, did you stay up a little bit later? Okay, so it's going to influence our decisions, but it won't make them for us. All right, arousal theory. So arousal theory is looking at what we would call optimum excitement or optimum arousal. Basically, what it is trying to show us is why does one person really enjoy just laying out on the couch versus another person who likes to go out and hang out with friends. So the arousal theory is saying that we are constantly seeking our optimum, keyword, optimum level of excitement or arousal or stimulation. And so some people really need to go out and do extreme sports, race cars, and live an exciting lifestyle. And other people are perfectly content just sitting at home, watching television and eating potato chips. So we are constantly influenced by how much excitement we want in our lives, and it's always interesting to watch two people on the opposite ends of the spectrum date each other. One person just wants to lay about the house, and the other person wants to go out and do exciting stuff. And seeing them kind of like juggle those differences can always be it's always a little interesting. Okay, so next we have the Yerkes-Dodson curve, and that falls within the arousal theory. So the Yerkes-Dodson curve is the simple idea that you want to find a certain amount of balance with stress and with like excitement or importance, because in order to perform at your peak, there needs to be some stakes. There needs to be some amount of stress. As you can see, it's like a upside down U. Basically, what it's saying is that when your stress levels are really low or really high, our performance goes down. So you can imagine somebody who's taking the bar exam to become a lawyer. They've been studying for 4+ years to take this one test. They know the information, they're intelligent, but you can imagine that sometimes, even though they are well prepared, they still don't do well, just because of how stressed out, how much anxiety there is. Same goes for low stress levels. When something doesn't have really any importance, oftentimes people don't try their best. It is the conundrum of every sports coach ever. It's not a game. During practice, even while it's not a game, oftentimes you run into people who don't give it their best because the stress level isn't terribly high. The stakes aren't very high. So when you're playing in a game, the stakes are a little bit higher. They're not too high, but sometimes people really struggle under high amounts of stress. Maybe it's the last shot with the final seconds remaining, or the final play, or what have you, and people with all of that extra stress don't do well because they can't handle it. That's the Yerkes-Dodson curve. Okay, so next we have Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is is kind of an overarching look at why we do the things that we do. Abraham Maslow believed that we all strove for self-actualization. We all strove to be atop this pyramid where we have a good understanding of ourselves and we can help others, and we are at peace with the world and feel good about ourselves. And as we strive to reach this self-actualization, it's not always easy, because in order to reach self-actualization, we have to make sure that all of these areas below us are covered. You need to make sure that you have eaten, that you have slept, that you are no longer thirsty. Once that's taken care of, you can start worrying about your safety. Do you have enough money in the bank? Is your house protected? Or do you live in a safe neighborhood? Stuff like that. Once that's taken care of, you can find people to love and care about, and to work on relationships, make friends, make sure that you're good with your parents, stuff like that. And then once that's finished, you can work on your self-esteem, being accomplished, doing well in school, things of that nature. And so as a teacher, I live in this esteem space. You guys that are here are attempting to build up your understanding of the world, and your understanding of the world helps you get to that next level. But oftentimes I deal with people who have broken up with their significant other, or maybe they don't feel safe, or maybe they're hungry or sleepy. So as a teacher, I am constantly kind of worrying about these things and trying to make sure that, even though and trying to understand where kids are coming from. Because if you've had a really big fight with your parents, or you've broken up with your significant other, you're not going to care about what's happening in the classroom. If you didn't get any sleep last night, you're just going to want to go to sleep. You're not going to care about anything else. You're going to be miserable. I have the silly example of, there's a guy in the back of the classroom juggling knives or whatever. No one's going to feel safe. And so, we've got to make sure that these lower end needs are taken care of so that we can pursue our higher end goals. Okay, last thing, cognitive dissonance theory. Okay, so I always leave this up there because it's a big concept, lots of things to think about. But here's the basic idea. So cognitive dissonance theory is looking at this. So Mr. Monk overall thinks that he's a pretty good guy. Okay, so I'm a pretty nice guy. I help other people. I, pay my taxes. I try to help other people out. Like, I'm nice to other people. I'm a nice guy. However, 2 weeks ago, or yesterday or today, Mr. Monk, while he was at the grocery store, stole a candy bar. That's supposed to be a frowny face, but it's not very good. Okay, stole a candy bar. Okay, well, that's not very nice, Mr. Monk. That's not a very good thing. So what ends up happening is we have what we would call cognitive dissonance, mental tension. Dissonance means tension. So what constantly happens throughout our lives is we have a belief about something. Could be a belief about ourselves, could be a belief about somebody else, could be it is just an understanding of how the world works. Okay? And then something comes along that breaks that idea up, or contradicts that idea. So you could have a friend that you thought was kind of a jerk, or not a friend, you see a person that was kind of a jerk, or used to be a really big jerk. You feel like they're a big bad person, and then they go and do something really nice for your friend. Okay, well, you thought they were an evil, terrible person, and then they go and do something nice. Or Mr. Monk thinks that he's a really nice guy, but then he goes and steals a candy bar. And so the problem is that these two things can't live in the same space. And so that creates tension within our mind. And so that tension is going to motivate us, to drive us to do something. And the cognitive dissonance theory doesn't really care about what it is that you do. It just goes to show that people do things, and we are motivated to do certain things based on this dissonance, based on this tension. It doesn't matter if you decide to return the candy bar or go back and pay for it. It doesn't matter if you decide that, oh, hey, that's not a big deal, like whatever, I'm still a nice guy. It doesn't matter if you decide to, hey, maybe I should befriend that really mean person, or I should just, be like, oh, well, they're probably just doing it to look like they're a nice person. So we're constantly making decisions because of this dissonance in our mind. I like the example of cheating in school because it's just kind of something that is rampant, and it's just the way that things go. And students do this all the time, where they think themselves good students or good people, and then they end up cheating. And the idea is, all right, well, why is it that I did this thing? Is it because the teacher didn't properly explain what was going on? Is it because, well, this is what all my friends do? Is this hey, like, the GPA race is real, like I got to stick with the GPA race? Or do they decide, oh, hey, you know what, maybe that's not me, like I don't want to do that anymore? And it's just a very prevalent discussion, and I'm sure lots of people have. Same goes for teachers. You see plenty of instances where teachers are just doing a really bad job at or they think they're a really nice person and they lash out at a kid for no reason, and so then they start trying to sort out, like, oh, do I need to change that? Like, do I need to, apologize to the kid? Or is it like, oh, well, the kid was being a jerk, it's totally not my fault, like this is just how, this is the only way to deal with these types of things? So that's a cognitive dissonance theory. Once again, the cognitive dissonance theory doesn't care about what decision that you make. It just cares that you had a belief about something, then there was an action or another belief that contradicted the initial belief, and that motivated you to make some type of change. Okay, so this is Theories of Motivation. Thanks for listening, guys. Hope you guys have a great day. See you later.